Today, I'm going to show you guys how I created this. It's fairly easy. It looks really complex, but it's a really cool piece of op art. So it was created using basic circles and straight, in this case, vertical lines. You could always view this the other way, which would be like this. I tend to like to look at it the way I just had it. But really, it could be viewed either way. So in this case, it's, again, just circles or rings and horizontal lines. So I'm going to show you how I came up with this. All you're going to need is a paper, a pencil, and then something to draw a straight edge with. So for me, I have a ruler. You just need a straight edge. So whatever a straight edge is for you, it could be the edge of a magazine or a sturdy book. Or a really thick piece of paper. Sometimes those, like junk mail, the things we get in the mail that's like junk mail, they're really thick, like a cardstock, something like that would work too. So in the original piece, I created a border. I'm not going to do that today. If you want to create this border, you can. Today I'm just going to show you how to take the lines all the way to the edge of the paper. So just in case it ends up looking different, that's going to be why. So to begin with, I'm just going to start, and I just like to make these oval shapes. So I'm going to start somewhat in the middle of my paper, pretty small, and then I'm going to make the next oval. Now make sure it's actually an oval. Don't do anything that's really sloppy, like, here's the back page, like this. Okay, that's sloppy. You want to make sure they really are ovals and the lines connect to form a shape. So they didn't cross over. Now, the fun part about this is you can make these closer together, farther apart. That part doesn't necessarily matter. Ooh, listen to that sound. As long as you've got... Oh, I'm bumping into this. I'm just going to turn my page. I'm a little crowded in here. I'm going to have to erase some of these lines. My desk is a little crowded when I'm making these demo videos. So if you guys have to pause and erase at any time, you can do that as well. I'm not going to get hung up on this part either. Okay. What you do once you can't make any more full circles, or in this case it's an oval, you're just going to kind of fake it. So go to the edge and then pretend like you're continuing that line. And then when you get back to where the paper would normally be, again, my computer's in the way. There we go. Hopefully you guys have a little bit more space to spread out. Okay, so here is our design so far. Doesn't look like much yet. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that straight edge. You want to make sure that it's straight and it's not getting crooked. That could make things get kind of weird. So you want to make sure that it's nice and straight. And you're just going to kind of decide when and how often you want to draw the line. Now they're all going to be vertical, or you could make them all horizontal, but you can't do both. That would be way too much for this project. So I'm not measuring how far I'm moving my ruler. Sometimes it might be wider, like so. Sometimes it might be closer, like it is here. And I truly try not to make much of a pattern with it. So maybe do a couple really close together here. And I may balance that out with a little bit wider. And remember, if it feels like it's getting really, really crooked, you can kind of gauge by the line over here. If it feels like it's really, really crooked, you may need to erase and start over. just kind of work on that as you go. So for me, because I'm right-handed, I think it's easier to just flip over my paper, and especially because I have this tiny little workspace trying to work through or work with. So again, this, really the hard part of this is keeping these lines straight. And you notice my pencil is actually going right, it's touching the ruler. It's going right along the ruler's edge. It's not out here trying to follow the ruler. I truly do have my pencil hugging the edge right here of my ruler. So remember, you're varying how close and how far away some of these lines are. You don't want to necessarily make a pattern. You want it to be somewhat random. Whoops, I didn't make it all the way to the edge over here. That's important. You want to make sure all of these lines go all the way to the edge of your paper. So I think this will be my last one right here. Okay. So far, we've got our rings or our ovals, whatever you want to call it, and then we've got a bunch of vertical lines. So now is the fun part. I'm going to bring this one back out as well. What I did is I just collected, when I made this, an array of colors. So I got what's like a purple color, that was one of them. I got a teal color, and then I got a little bit darker green. This is more blue, this is more green. And then I have one that's kind of this mint green, and then I have one that's a peach, and then I have black. You guys can pick whatever colors you want, but as you're drawing these colors out, which I had different markers at the time, but I think these are probably pretty similar to what I had, you're just going to start using them in somewhat of a pattern. I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? So within each section, you're going to turn it into somewhat of a checkerboard pattern, and you can do as many sections, as many, we'll call them rows, as you want, as long as you're doing the opposite color, and you have to stop at some point. So I just chose to kind of draw this section all in black and white, and then over here you can see this section is maybe 1, 2, 3 sections are the peach, and then this section right here I did 3 that were sort of that teal, but here I only chose a little bit, maybe 2 sections for the green. You kind of make those choices of when to start and when to stop. So I'm looking through at my drawing, and I'm kind of thinking it would look a lot more interesting if I maybe had another ring or 2 in here. So I'm going to add that. You do not have to, but just for the sake of how this turns out, I think I'm going to. Again, these just kind of have to touch, and I definitely want more out here. My corners are kind of empty. Okay. So now I'm going to show you, I added just a few more in there just for interest. Now I'm going to show you how I did this. I may start just right in the middle. So I'm going to block off with this piece of paper that I had before, or better yet, how about an all-white paper? I'm just going to block off a couple sections and focus on one little area at a time. So cramped for space, you guys. This little section right here, okay? And I think in the beginning, I'm going to use this color. So again, it's going to be like a checkerboard pattern. So I'm just going to find one row. And you guys know me, I love to outline and then color in. So a checkerboard pattern is going to be like color, white, color, white. It's going to be that traditional A, B pattern. And then in the next row, you're going to do exactly the opposite. So if I started with purple in this row, then in the next row, I'm going to start with white so that I have the opposite color effect going all the way down. There we go. So I won't color the whole thing while you're watching, but I do want you to get a good sense of how to do this. So again, I did this whole row. Now I'm going to do the opposite. So instead of starting with purple, I start with white, and I'm going to fill in the opposite colors. And it's easiest just to work row by row. Don't try to get out of your row. That's when it gets really difficult. Even if you're like, I know this one's purple, don't do it. Stay in your row, because when you get toward the middle where there's rings, it can get really confusing. I haven't taught this lesson for a couple years, but the last time I caught it, just depending on where your lines meet up, with where your like oval shape or whatever, maybe you didn't want to do an oval, maybe you wanted to do a more squared or rectangular shape. Sometimes depending on where they hit, if they hit at funny places, it can be really confusing. So the best advice I can give kids is just to go one row at a time. Even if you want to kind of start working left to right, I wouldn't do it. Work top to bottom. That's just the easiest way. So I'm going to do this just for a few, like I said, this section that I've got uncovered. And if you have anything that you can put to cover up the rest of your piece, just so it's not as confusing really, I would highly suggest that. If you've got extra paper or a book or a notebook or anything that can just cover up, or like I said, junk mail, if there's anything in the junk mail that has that nice straight edge, use that. If you used one of those cards for your lines, use it to help cover this up. Alright, so this is going to be the last little section that I have with this purple color, and then I'm going to do this all over again, but in a different color. And I don't have to do 4 sections. See how I have here, I have purple, white, purple, white. The next one I can just do 1 row, or I could do 2 rows, or I could do whatever I want. Now you can have as many colors as you want. If you want to do this whole thing in like black and white and just put like a little emphasis of red here and there, or lime green, or I don't know, you guys decide on your colors. That's totally acceptable. If you want to do all black, Sharpie, or colored pencil, whatever you've got at home. I realize you guys don't have these permanent markers like I have. You're going to be using whatever you have. So if you have markers, use that. If you have colored pencils, use that. Crayons might be kind of hard because they're probably at this point not pointy anymore. The tips are probably a little more rounded. So that one would be a hard one to use. But just use whatever you've got at home. So if you just want to do all of this in one color and put maybe an accent of another color, you can do that. If you want to do a whole bunch of colors, if you want to do it rainbow, I had a bunch of kids that wanted to do a rainbow when I did this last time. So they started with red and worked all the way across their paper, and it turned out really neat. You can do that too. So you decide. It's still going to be a really cool piece of op art. And I suppose really, if we're being honest, you could just use one color. So I say black, but if you want to just use like blue or just use green, they still look really neat, even if it is just in, one color in white. Okay, so now that I've got this row complete, show you what it looks like. Now here's where the tricky part is, and then I'm going to pause it and show you what it looks like when it's all done. This is the tricky part, guys. If I ended on white, I'm going to need to start the next line in a color, okay? That way I don't have white touching white or color touching color. I don't know that I did that in any of these, but that was a common problem when I taught this last time, is that kids would start the next color. Like if they started on this side, they would start the next color and they would put like purple next to green. So then you would have white next to white, and it doesn't work that way. So just be mindful of that while you're working, and I think that you should be okay. I'm so cramped for space here, but I'll show you what I mean. I'm just going to do 2 sections here, and I'm going to do this teal color. So I ended on white, which means I have to start with the teal color. So that, remember, it's an AB pattern, so I'm going to go teal, white. So I need white to match up with my blue. Otherwise, like I said, it would be white, 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 color, 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 and it would be really weird. So that is the tricky part. Hopefully you guys listened this whole way through and you didn't kind of fast forward through this part, because that was definitely one of the trickier parts that people struggled with. So just keep that in mind as you work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it, keep working, and I will see you guys in just a second. Okay, so I didn't get as far as I thought I would, but it's because I wanted to stop and show you something. First of all, I realized I left this part uncolored, and since it's in the same row as this, I know that gets a little tricky. It's kind of an inner ring. It still gets that like purpley color. So I left that when I was coloring the first time, so I apologize for that. But also, I specifically did an odd number so that you guys could see what I'm talking about with the making sure you start with the opposite. So if I went green, white, green, then I have to start with white this time. No matter what color I use, I have to start with white. And a lot of kids want to get their color and start with the color in the top row. And in this case, if I did that, it would go peach, white, and I'd kind of start making stripes. So make sure that if you end in a color, then the next one starts with white, and then the next box can be your color. That is an easy mistake when kids are working on this project. It's easy because, like I said, they just want to start with the very top box. They want to start with whatever color they've got in their hand, and it may be that it's supposed to be a white box. So just keep that in mind as you are working. So I'm going to pause again, but I wanted to kind of walk you through and show you what I was talking about. So in case you run into that issue, you'll know what to do before you kind of get off a little bit. All right, guys, here is my finished project. I used a lot of the same colors as I used in this one just because I wanted you to be able to kind of follow along and see how I made them both exactly the same. The only difference is I created a border on this one before I got started. So if you want to put a small border around, you can. If you want to do the whole paper, you can do that too. Again, my paper is 12 inches this way by 9 inches this way, so mine's a larger paper. If you want to do yours on a smaller piece, that's totally fine too. And obviously you don't have to use the colors I did. I just did them to show you kind of start to finish. So I'm going to leave this here. If you want to pause yours, pause the video here and start making yours. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you.